Well, hello, everybody. I'm Liz Buser with the AARP Fraud Watch Network. And, for the past 4 years, we've collaborated with the International Association of Financial Crimes Investigators, IAFCI. And in fact, nearly half of all AARP state offices work with their local IAFCI chapters to help consumers spot and avoid scams and fraud in their communities. And I am so happy to welcome today's guest, Mark Solomon. He's IAFCI's International President. It would help if I could speak. So today, Mark's going to tell us about IFCI's important work and resources, and we're also going to spend some time talking about online romance scams. So welcome to our program, Mark.
Hey, Liz, and thank you for inviting me, and thanks to AARP Fraud Watch Network for all the things they do to educate our public. So thank you. I'm glad being here.
Well, thrilled to have you. It's always great to see you. And for those in our audience, please feel free to ask a question at any time. But Mark, let's kick things off. So tell us about IAFCI and how it and its members protect consumers from scams and fraud.
Certainly. So we've been around for 55 years serving the global community. And it's a organization made up of private sector and public sector. So we have law enforcement from all different levels to financial institutions, retail institutions, and again, people like AARP Fraud Watch Network volunteers that are also a part of our organization. So our focus is on training and education of all sorts of frauds, financial and cyber crimes, how to investigate them, how to identify suspects that are committing these crimes. But we're also an outward reaching organization that we want to educate the public because the best way to prevent a crime from happening is for it to never occur in the first place. So.
Absolutely. And I want to give a big shout out to our AARP Connecticut state office because they're the ones that started working with IAFCI in Connecticut and really started the ball rolling with the relationship. So thank you, Connecticut, if you're watching. So Mark, you're a former detective and you're so passionate about the importance of reporting and investigating fraud cases because as we've talked about here, these are crimes that are perpetrated against somebody. Tell us why both reporting and investigating is so important.
Yeah, like I said, we want people to report crimes. A lot of times people that get victimized by frauds or scams, they're afraid to come forward because maybe they feel embarrassment, but they shouldn't feel embarrassment. This is about a crime. You've been targeted as a victim of a crime, and we want you to come forward because hopefully law enforcement or a combination of law enforcement and the private sector investigators working together can help identify these individuals committing these frauds and then stop future people from being victimized. So we definitely want people to come forward. I would love to tell you in 26 years that I solved all my cases that I worked. But there's so many of these types of attacks and crimes occurring that we can't identify all the suspects or arrest everybody. So that's where the fraud and the awareness and education in our communities is so important. And that's what I love about, AARP Fraud Watch Network is that you guys go out there into the communities with the subject matter experts and talk about the latest trends and crimes that we're seeing so people don't become a victim.
Absolutely. And I do want to mention, speaking of reporting, if someone has spotted a scam or they or a loved one may have fallen victim to one, you can call our AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. That's 877-908-3360. I put that number on the screen. And so, Mark, you host a podcast called IAFCI Presents the Protectors Podcast. So what does the podcast focus on? That's my first question. And then second, if you could tell us about episode 25, which is called Matters of the Heart, a journey from scam victim to national advocate for justice. Because your guests for that episode have been previous guests on our Facebook Lives, and so they'll be familiar to our viewers.
Yeah, and thanks for putting in a little plug for the podcast. We just started a little over a year ago with the IFCI, and it's called IFCI Presents the Protectors Podcast. I co-host with Mike Carroll, who is our international chairman. But we love doing this podcast because it's an outward reaching type podcast to the public, to our communities, and say, hey, we bring in a guest every episode to talk about frauds, financial or cyber crimes occurring in our communities. And our hope is that we can educate people enough to make sure that they don't fall victim, or if they're been a victim, to come forward and report it. So like I said, it's been a lot of fun, and probably one of my all-time favorite episodes was talking to Kate Kleinert, and Kathy Stokes and Paul Greenwood. We actually met at our international conference in National Harbor last year, and recorded the podcast live there. And it really touches your heart. I know, Liz, you know Kate, and she's just such an incredible person who was targeted by a romance scam and lost pretty much her entire life savings. And to make matters worse, she was unable to make some repairs in her house after the crime, and her house burnt down, and 5 of her rescue dogs perished in the fire. So I've really been connected with Kate ever since hearing her speak at the conference, with AARP bringing her there to speak to us all. And like I said, we're working on her case, trying to identify who the suspects are. And she just is an incredible person that goes forward, and could have kept a secret or kept it to herself, but she's out there on the national stage with the AARP and educating others that may fall victim to this, or maybe people that are currently in romance scams and don't realize it. So it was a great experience, and I think she's just an incredible person.
Absolutely. And the website for the podcast is protectorspodcast.com. And I think you had said it's also available wherever you can get major podcasts. And what I loved about both that podcast episode and the presentation that you did with Kathy and Kate and Paul Greenwood at the conference last year is, you all talked about why it's important to investigate these crimes, why they should be prosecuted. And by Kate sharing her story too, it really just hit home for the audience there about why all of that is so important and what it's like for someone who's been targeted by a criminal. So thank you for that. And, speaking of romance scams, of course, yesterday was Valentine's Day, and we do talk a lot on our Facebook Live programs about these relationship scams. So, Mark, what are your tips for spotting and avoiding these type of scams?
Yeah, and it's, when we talk about where these scams occurring, we're seeing these grow out into other platforms. Primarily, you'd see them in dating platforms, or, but now we're seeing it on social media, Facebook, all different sorts of social media platforms. So it may not necessarily occur on a dating app. So one of the things you're going to want to look for is follow the policy of those companies that are offering this platform. The fraudsters are going to want to try and get you off the platform as quick as possible and start communicating with you either on a chat app, or by telephone, or other methods other than the platform. And that should be one of the first red flags that you see. The next thing is to realize that the fraudsters, they'll take their time. We call it grooming, where they actually are trying to get you to connect emotionally to them. So your objectivity goes out the window. So you want to definitely make sure that, be understanding that fraudsters will be patient, because they're hoping eventually to take your money, or they're looking to get you engaged in a fraud scheme where you actually accept stolen money and then transfer it elsewhere. So we call that money mules. Some other things to look out for is, unfortunately, long-term overseas relationships can work, but a lot of these fraudsters will use that and say they're in another country, because they don't want to communicate in person, face to face, and they don't will have excuses why they can't go on video, and just send you pictures. And a lot of times, those pictures, if you Google them on Google, you can actually take the photo and see if it shows up on anywhere else. So these are some of the things to watch out for. The other thing I could tell you is money. When you're getting to know somebody and building a relationship from new, it should never be about money, and it should never be sending money or receiving money. It should be about getting to know that person. So you should be very wary of anyone that is trying to either send you money or is asking you for your money. Fraudsters, and I know AARP, Fraud Watch Network, uses this term a lot, is getting you under the ether. and they get that emotional side of you, and they get you off guard. And then all of a sudden, there's usually a major emergency or serious problem or accident, and they need money right away. And because you're emotionally involved in that relationship, they get you to send that money. Some other things to look out for is the use of cryptocurrency. And again, all money transactions, you should be very wary of somebody when you're entering in a new relationship. But we're seeing a trend of cryptocurrency, gift cards being used to send money to the fraudster.
Absolutely. Definitely a red flag if somebody asks you to send them money, as you said, via gift card, crypto, wire transfer, or even peer-to-peer payment apps. So thank you for those red flags. And I do have on the screen the link to the AARP Fraud Watch Network website. That's aarp.org/Fraud Watch Network. So you can learn more about online romance scams and all the other types of scams out there. And so you can sign up to receive our biweekly fraud watchdog alerts. So, Mark, we are almost out of time. Any final thoughts for our audience today?
I would just thank you all for tuning in. And like I said, knowledge is power. If we could get more and more people to these events, talking about it in our communities, like I said, you'll be surprised how many people that are either in the process of falling for these scams or already have and they're unaware. So the more we educate, and the great work that AARP is doing in the Fraud Watch Network to bring awareness is the key to hopefully avoid being a victim.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. And on the screen, protectorspodcast.com to get to your podcast, and the IAFCI website. If people want to learn more, I believe that's IAFCI.org. Is that correct?
Yes, and we have some great information. We have a members only section of that website, but we have an outward facing section, and there's a lot of information out about various scams and frauds that are out there. So please check out our website. And again, we wish you all a happy and healthy 2023, and most importantly, a fraud-free 2023.
Absolutely. You said it so well, Mark. And thank you so much for being here. And as always, thank you to our audience for tuning in. Remember, if you can spot a scam, you can stop a scam. And external research shows that if you know about a specific scam, you are 80% less likely to engage. And if you do engage, you are 40% less likely to lose money. And so the AARP Fraud Watch Network is here to support you. Again, you can visit us online at aarp.org/Fraud Watch Network to learn more. And of course, you can reach out to the AARP Fraud Watch Network helpline. We have trained staff and volunteers who are there to answer your calls Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And that phone number is 877-908-3360.
Now,
So we hope, yes,
Liz,
sir.
I've heard people actually sing that song, that phone number before. So we're going to put you on the spot and see if you can sing it.
I cannot do it as justice like Betty in Connecticut. She is the original singer of the Fraud Watch Network. So we'll have to get her to record that. And so I see Marilyn from Connecticut's on. Marilyn, tell Betty she's got to get on here to sing it next time. But thank you for that, Mark. And we hope everyone will join us next week. We're going to have the Federal Trade Commission here who are going to share information about their updated Pass It On resources. So with that, hope everybody has a great day, and thank you for joining us. Bye.
Thank you.